Welcome to Action Science Conversations. Hi, Jeffrey.
How you doing, Squirrel?
Just fine, thank you. So we were talking about a story I had a few weeks ago about introducing action science, and I thought I'd tell the story and see what you thought about it. The group I was talking to was new to action science, and I was describing all the great Model 2 things you could do with getting more information from your team and getting internal commitment from them with all the techniques we use. And somebody piped up in the back and said, well, that's all well and good, Squirrel. It's great to have everybody feel good and work together, but at some point you've got to have a leader who makes a firm decision. And I said, absolutely, and that makes lots of sense, and actually there's nothing inconsistent between the action science approaches and different decision-making models. So it lends itself naturally to a consensus model where the whole team together makes a decision and everybody buys into it, but it lends itself equally well to a model where a leader is going to be well informed about what's happening in the team and get the most information that he or she can, and then at some point makes a decision, possibly against resistance. So both models are perfectly valid, and I've used both, and they work just fine. You had some further thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think what's interesting about the story is, in my mind, there's two things that come across, which is first the idea that the decisive leader somehow should not be curious. That somehow the idea that the decisive leader is someone who already knows all there is to know as a model. So why would they ask? I think that's one cultural stereotype. But really, even more interesting to me is and more damaging is the assumption that a consensus process has to be slow. And for that matter, there's also the assumption that a command process will be fast. But in my experience, the decision-making process and the timescales are unrelated. That you can have a very fast consensus approach, and you can have a very lengthy command decision, and they're not coupled in that way. And that actually it can be the case that a consensus process can be faster in that you are, especially when it comes to execution, but even the decision-making process, because you can get more information out faster.
Exactly. It's so valuable to get that additional information, and you can assume that you have it all, and therefore that you're going to make a decision and you're just going to tell your team about it. Or you can come in with the frame that you have a decision in mind, and you'd like more information which might falsify it. And I find the latter to be often much more helpful, and often, as you say, to help me to make a decision much more quickly, because I may not have total certainty. I may want to reflect more about how I'm going to proceed, but then someone has a completely new idea or new information that means my original idea is complete rubbish. And that's happened to me more times than I can count.
But now you're talking about making good decisions versus bad decisions. I think this is really where the mutual learning model excels, which is if we're trying to make good decisions, then we want more information. And in action science terms, the learning comes from the detection and correction of error. And so the most valuable part of your process is that which informs you that you are about to make a mistake and allows you to make a different decision. So whatever decision-making model you're using, whether it's command or consensus or something else, the key element for me is how does it allow me to detect error in the process? How do I disconfirm the idea that I'm coming in with? I have lots of years experience now in technology, and yet I don't want to assume that I'm going to make the right decision. I'll be very happy to find that my pre-existing beliefs are correct, but I need to be open to the idea that, in fact, there might be something I don't know that's relevant to this, if, in fact, I want to have an effective organization. I suppose if I don't care about the accuracy of the decision, then that's a different story.
It's easy to make wrong decisions very quickly, and that's not something I'm usually interested in. And then we've mentioned it, but it's probably worth being explicit that downstream from this, in the execution, if you've involved more people in the decision, even if it's very fast, even if it's a 5-minute conversation before you walk into the board meeting to make your decisive assertions and act on your decision, you're much more likely to have internal commitment and get the assistance of your team in executing. If you haven't shared your reasoning and solicited and attempted to falsify your beliefs, that's going to be much harder for them to see why you might have made a decision and why, for example, if it's wrong, it might still have been valid for you to make it.
That's right. Absolutely. And I think this is interesting when we talk about the goal here of changing organizational dynamics. I think this is an interesting illustration of how we are working against a cultural bias, a stereotype of what a leader is supposed to be. A leader is supposed to be someone who has all the information. A leader is supposed to be someone who's decisive. And in an organization, it's not just the leaders who feel this way, who feel they have to act decisively, but very often the followers are looking for the leaders to act in this way. And I think they can find it uncomfortable when the leaders begin asking questions because it's a mismatch between their expectations. So I think as we talk to people about how to change organizations and we're talking to leaders and coaching them, is to have people get into a mindset where they see this as a positive. Both for the leaders and for the followers. And it should be something people should be excited about, making decisive decisions either as a group or have an individual making it, but based on better information. Everyone should be excited about that, but we're going to have to overcome this cultural bias that if I'm being curious, then somehow I'm weak and indecisive. And in fact, we should see it as a sign of strength and someone who is more invested in a more effective outcome rather than the appearance of being the great leader.
I'm looking forward to somebody making a movie sometime where the great leader is fighting off the aliens and stops for a minute and says, guys, let's think about our plan of attack. Which way should we go about this? And then goes off to attack the aliens rather than giving the rousing speech describing the wonderful plan he's cooked up all by himself.
Right. How do we change the movie version of the way leaders are supposed to change? So
we'll see if we can do that.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks, Jeffrey, and thanks, everyone. We'd love for your comments below. Thanks for watching Action Science Conversations.